I'm JC, if someone can pronounce my last name. So, who I am? No, am I in the wrong way? Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit, probably before we get started, why I hopefully will tell you something interesting about how to scale a fast-growth SaaS company. So I've had the chance to do it in two different companies, one in retail point of sale and now at TravelPerk. And along the way, I have done some interesting stuff and a lot of mistakes. So what I'm going to tell you about is some of the good stuff, but also some of the mistakes, because we can learn a lot from it. And I'm going to tackle three different topics: how to take risk, how to scale, and how to define focus. And for each of them, because I only have 15 minutes, I'm going to try to give you one thing that you can bring back to your startup. Let's start with risk. Little disclaimer about myself, I'm a riskaholic. I love risk. And I hope for you that you love risk too, because otherwise you should have never started to work in this industry. And I love risk in my professional life, but I also love it in my personal life. I'm a scuba diver, and I decided to go and dive with a crocodile. I highly recommend not to do it. And what I did when I did that is I took a little yellow stick with me, because the dive master told me, if the crocodile comes too close to you, you just punch him with a stick and he's gone away. Yeah. It kind of didn't really work, and he went really close to me. And at that point, I understand the nature of risk. And one of the nature of risk is you need to know what you are doing, and you need to have a way out. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So, yeah, how do we make that in the context of SaaS? First thing is, when you want to take a risk, when you want to enter a new market, when you want to launch a new product, there is no excuse to not know what you are doing before. What we see very often, and a bit of the mythology around startup, is fake it until you make it. I'm like, okay, I'm okay with fake it until you make it, but know your data. You can fake it, but you need to know what success looks like, what failure looks like. And in particular, be ruthless. Why being ruthless is because being ruthless will tell you if you are being successful or if you are not. Specifically, a couple of things. Don't optimize on the failure. You start to launch a new market, it is obviously not working. Don't try to optimize. Don't try to post-analyze thinking, yeah, but it's kind of working. If it's not working, it's not working. How will you know that? It's because you have defined the data before you start. Another thing that I have done myself very often is I launched a project because I'm excited about, and I actually don't know what success looks like. And finally, accept. Have the culture in your company that some stuff will not work. You will not succeed in every product launch. You will not succeed in every market penetration. You just need to accept it and have a culture of acceptance. And one of the framework that I use is this theory from Jeff Bezos. It's called the revolving door, or the two-way door. Is when you make a decision, you want to think, can I get out of it very easily? For example, when you're underwater with a crocodile next to you, that's not a two-way door. It's like either him or you. However, a way to think about it is, if you want to launch a new market, instead of putting 10 people in the US, what about you put 2 people in the UK targeting the US? Because if it works, then you can expand. If it doesn't work, then the way to change the decision is much easier. So avoid this. So now that you know how to, hopefully, take risk, let's talk about growing. And in growing, one of the most important things is how do you grow? I could spend probably the next hour talking about it, so I'm going to focus on only one topic that I feel is the most important one to define if you're going to be successful or not. And it's hiring. Why? Because you are not going to grow the company by yourself. You're going to grow the company by hiring the top people in the world. And at the moment, the rare resource is no longer capital. You can raise money. It's hard, it's painful, but you can raise money. What's the rare resource is to recruit the right people. And in order to recruit the right people, what you want to avoid is to look for a unicorn. You want to avoid looking for a product marketing manager that has done business development and can write technically and speak 4 languages. This person doesn't exist. If this person exists, please apply for TravelPerk. But this person doesn't exist. How do you avoid the unicorn symptom? You avoid the unicorn symptom with investing in a scorecard. Scorecard sounds really boring, but it's really important. What do you have in a scorecard? In a scorecard, you have the mission. What's the mission? Why do this position exist? Why do you need it? Then you get the outcome. What's an outcome is, I want this person to do that. An outcome should be measurable. That's how you will define if this person is successful or not. Then you get the competency. What will be the competency for this person to deliver the outcome? And don't ever forget the cultural fit, because you will have people who are brilliant, but you just don't want them. This is what it looks like, and what's really important about the scorecard is to agree before you start. Why? Because if you can't agree on paper about what people should do, what will happen is you're going to refuse every single candidate because you don't know what you're looking for. Now that you know, hopefully, what the scorecard looks like, let me run you through the process we use in my company. It comes from Jeff Smart, who wrote a really good book called The Who. Promise I have no share in this book, but it's a great book. And the process is the following. You start by having HR doing a screening. Why can they do a great screening? Because you have defined a great scorecard, so they know what you are looking for. Then you get the manager to do the deep dive. Go deeply into, is it a good salesperson? Is it a good engineer? Then you do an assessment. You see the person in action. You ask the salesperson to do a phone call. You ask the engineer to do a code test. Then you always do a cultural fit. Don't cut corner. You might have people who will pass all this step and you just don't want them to work for you. Then you do references. And the key fundamental thing to keep in mind is 1 interview per function. What does that mean? What we see very often is that you will have people who will repeat the same interviews through the process. It's a terrible candidate experience and it's utterly useless. So if somebody is concentrated on the technical skills, do 1 interview only on this topic. You don't need to do 3 of them. So my last advice on the recruitment side of it before we move to focus is scorecard, scorecard, and scorecard. Always, even for internal promotion. Why? Because what we see often is you have a customer care team, you realize you need a manager, and you take the guy and it's like, oh, you're a manager now. That's terrible. That's terrible for the organization. That's terrible for him, because you don't know what you're expecting from this person. So even for internal promotion, write down the scorecard. It doesn't need to take 2 days, just write it down. It's going to make your life much easier. Now that hopefully you know how to take risk, you know how to scale the company, let's finish with where to focus the energy. Focusing is about saying no. And yes, sometimes. I'm going to try to explain you the framework we use, especially in the context of product launch or penetration of new market, about when we say yes and when we say no. So when we say no we say no when it's an emotional decision. We say no because somebody in the company really feels we should go to the US. We say no when it's based on an outlier. You have this one company that has adopted your platform and then suddenly you think you can sell to the enterprise market. That's not the right way to make the decision. The right way to make the decision is to make it based on natural conversion. You will have a look objectively on what is converting well. Who are the customers that are adopting your platform with minimum friction? Why? Because it's already so hard to launch a startup, so hard to launch a product that you don't want to add on top of it the fact that you need to convince people that they need your product. My last piece of advice about segmentation and focus. First, use very precise filter. And when I say precise filter, it needs to be objective. So you are not targeting early adopter companies that care about design. That's not a precise filter. You can't go on LinkedIn and use that as a filter. A precise filter is the number of employees, the number of offices, the technology sector they are in. The second part is it needs to be uncomfortably narrow. Your target market needs to be so narrow that you feel uncomfortable with it. Does that mean you will stay with this very narrow market? No. When we started at TravelPerk, we are only selling to people between 50 to 200 employees that have 3 offices. Now we sell to people who have 20 offices and 2,000 employees. But we start with a small target market and then we expand it from it. You need to make sure that, again, you don't make decisions based on outlier. You make decisions based on the broader view of it. And last but not least, and if there is one thing you need to remember from me today, apart from my crocodile story, is when you define a target market and a target persona, it's incredibly important that the entire organization has the same one. If marketing thinks that you are targeting SMB and product thinks you are targeting consumer, it doesn't matter who is right, the company is losing. So I really invite you on the target market to do the same as the scorecard. Please write it down. Write it down at any point of time. Make it evolve, but writing it down will allow the entire organization to have the exact same definition. Thanks a lot for your time. I'll be around and I will be happy to take your question.